I want you to just imagine something for a second. Think about the various people in your life, different types of relationships you navigate every single day.
Right. Family, friends, coworkers.
Exactly. Now, what if I told you that the most profoundly selfish individuals you interact with might actually be the ones who are like constantly looking you in the eye and telling you they are living entirely for you?
That is quite the claim.
Right. And if we flip that paradigm completely upside down, what if the absolute most selfless people you will ever meet are the ones who boldly, and I mean unapologetically, admit that they only live for themselves?
It sounds completely backward on first hearing it. I mean, it essentially takes everything we are taught about morality, about living in a cooperative society, and just turns it inside out.
It totally breaks the conventional rules. But exploring that exact paradox is what we are tackling in today's deep dive.
And it is a deep one.
It really is. We're looking at a highly provocative essay. It's titled Live for Yourself, Never for Others. And it's written by Senveng, who is the founder of a philosophy and community known as Lifechanyuan.
Right. And just for context, the specific text we're working from today was translated by Treasurer and edited by Kyer.
Yes, thank you for that. So our mission today is to completely unpack this text. We want to really dig into its radical reframing of selfishness, selflessness, and honestly, the incredibly heavy burden of altruism.
Okay, let's unpack this because to really grasp this, we have to throw out a lot of our preconceived notions.
We really do, and it's a pleasure to dive into this material with you. Because this is not a text that tiptoes around its central ideas. It tackles them head on.
No sugarcoating at all.
Exactly. To understand where Shuai Feng is coming from, we have to start at his foundational premise about the very nature of existence itself.
Okay, lay it on us.
Well, he argues that the greatest creator, the source of all things, designed every single life as a distinct, entirely unique individual.
Meaning you aren't just a carbon copy of someone else, right? You were endowed with free will, a very specific nature, a unique physiological system, and a totally unique trajectory. It operates on this natural, universal order.
Like a natural flow of existence.
Yes, exactly. A flow that the text later refers to as the Tao.
That sets up a pretty fascinating baseline, honestly. I mean, it implies that your individuality isn't just, some accident of genetics. You were specifically engineered to be a singular entity with your own path.
That is the core of it. And before we can even begin to look at human behavior or how we treat our friends and family, we have to establish this cosmic framework.
Because it scales up and down.
Right. According to the essay, living for oneself is actually a universal imperative. The argument is that a rich, varied, and fantastic world is only possible when diverse lives follow their own unique missions.
So trying to be someone you're not is actually a problem.
A massive problem. If you repress someone's nature, or if you try to force them to live according to your will, the text describes that as extremely selfish, cruel, and fundamentally against the way of the greatest creator.
I really want to visualize the mechanics of this, because it's a huge concept.
Yeah, how do you see it?
Well, it's like looking at an enormous symphony orchestra. Every single musician is assigned a very specific instrument, right?
Right, you have your sheet music, your chair.
Exactly, your designated role in the production. Now, imagine if the flutist suddenly decides, you know what, I'm going to be completely selfless today. I'm going to stop playing my flute, and I'm going to lean over and try to play the violinist's strings for them.
Oh, wow. That would be a disaster.
Complete disaster. Not only do they abandon their own part, ruining the flute section, but they also crowd the violinist, mess up the bowing, and essentially destroy the entire symphony.
What's fascinating here is how that analogy captures the actual physics of Zhu Feng's philosophy.
How so?
Well, a flute physically cannot produce the sound of a violin, right? Its fundamental architecture is just different. In the exact same way, one human soul cannot fulfill the unique biological and spiritual trajectory of another. The text states that if everyone lives for themselves, things are orderly and easy.
Everyone can just live out their own style.
Exactly. But the moment people stop living for themselves and attempt to live for others, they become exhausted.
And I imagine the people they are trying to serve become exhausted too.
Oh, absolutely. Because you are fighting the natural architecture of who they are.
Which completely changes how we view social friction. I mean, if someone is trying to play my instrument for me, even if they claim they are helping, It feels intrusive.
It creates profound chaos. In this philosophy, it just completely flips our traditional script on what harmony actually means.
Because normally we're told harmony is all about compromise.
Right. In most cultures, we are taught that harmony is achieved through mutual sacrifice. I give up a little of what I want, you give up a little of what you want, and we meet in the middle.
The classic compromise.
But Lifechanyuan's core value posits that harmony is not achieved through compromise or mutual sacrifice. It is achieved through radical individual responsibility. You are simply responsible to the greatest creator and to yourself.
Okay, so that establishes the grand cosmic scale. You have to play your own instrument, follow your own trajectory.
Yes.
But let's pivot from the abstract cosmos right down into our living rooms. If this cosmic harmony relies on self-interest, how does this hold up when we examine our most intimate human connections?
You mean the relationships we've always been told are supposed to be entirely selfless?
Exactly. Does the essay go there?
Oh, it goes there. This is where the essay pulls no punches and really challenges the reader. It systematically dismantles the societal performance of altruistic love, starting with marriage.
Okay, brace yourselves.
Yeah. The text bluntly asks if there is any husband who lives completely for his wife, or any wife who lives completely for her husband.
And I'm guessing the answer isn't a fairy tale romance?
Not at all. The author's answer is a resounding, of course not. Even the deepest romantic love is, at its essence, for the self.
Which, and this might sound cold at first, but it makes sense if you think about the mechanics of why people partner up. We often use phrases like, you complete me, which sounds super romantic, but fundamentally it means you fulfill a need within me.
Precisely. It's about what you get out of it.
The expectation is entirely symmetrical. I provide for your needs so that you provide for mine.
Exactly. And the essay argues we should just stop pretending otherwise. But it doesn't stop at the symmetrical relationships of marriage. It scales up to look at asymmetrical power dynamics too, like politics.
Right, the ruler and the ruled.
Yes, the essay looks at kings, presidents, chairmen. Do they live completely for the people? The text says, absolutely not.
Even the ones who claim to be public servants.
Especially him. They serve the people, certainly, but they do it to gain favor, to consolidate their power, and to maintain their positions. It's described as a tacit, unspoken understanding between the leader and the public.
So the whole I serve you narrative is actually...
There's a mechanism of control. The more favor they gain by appearing selfless, the more they ultimately benefit themselves.
It's a transaction masked as a sacrifice. Wow. But reading through the text, there is a natural progression here.
Oh, we aren't done.
Right. We go from the social contracts of marriage to the power contracts of politics, and then the essay tackles the most controversial biological bond of all, parenting.
Yeah, this part is a profound deconstruction of family dynamics. The essay argues that parents do not have children for the children's sake.
That's a tough pill to swallow.
It is, but the reasoning is rooted in consent. It points out that children never consented to be brought into a world of suffering.
Right. You don't ask to be born.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The act of creation is entirely unilateral. So therefore, the parents are having kids to satisfy their own desires.
The essay lists those desires specifically. Right. Like it breaks down the motives.
It does. It says parents have children to experience the feeling of parenthood, to receive glorification, to pass on a genetic legacy, or simply to have someone to support them in their old age.
So it's all about the parent.
Because the child didn't ask to be born, every motivation for bringing them into existence originates within the parent's self-interest.
Wow.
It even claims that later in life, when parents push their kids to get married or pursue certain careers against the kids' wishes, it's still entirely for the parents' benefit, usually to save face or ensure their own comfort.
Here's where it gets really interesting because, as you're listening to this, I imagine you might be feeling quite defensive. I know I did.
It's a very normal reaction.
When you first read that, it challenges the most foundational stories we tell ourselves about family. I have to push back here on behalf of the listener. Isn't this incredibly cynical?
It definitely sounds that way.
Can't a parent just genuinely love their child? Can't a spouse just genuinely adore their partner without it secretly being some cold, calculating, transactional scheme?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it changes the framing. The text isn't actually saying that love, care, or affection don't exist.
Oh, so it's not saying the feelings are fake.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It isn't saying a parent doesn't feel profound warmth or an urge to protect their child. What Zwifeng is arguing is that the root motivation, the very foundation of the action, always tracks back to the self.
I see.
The desire to love and care for a child is a desire that originates within the parent, to fulfill a need within the parent.
So it's not that the love is fake, it's that the reason for the love is self-fulfillment.
Yes. And while it might sound cynical to our conditioned ears, acknowledging this reality might actually be the most liberating thing you could do for a relationship.
Liberating. How so?
Let's look at the psychological mechanics of it. If a parent operates under the illusion of pure selflessness, they often consciously or subconsciously expect endless gratitude.
Right, the look at all I sacrificed for you narrative.
Exactly. But if a parent admits that they brought a child into the world for their own joy and legacy, it completely removes that toxic burden of debt from that relationship.
That is a massive perspective shift. The child doesn't owe the parent for the sacrifice of raising them because it wasn't a sacrifice. It was the parent fulfilling their own biological and emotional desires.
Exactly. Acknowledging that root selfishness actually allows for a much cleaner, more honest form of love. It is free from coercion.
Because the friction usually comes from feeling like you owe someone.
Right, the friction in families usually comes from this unwritten ledger of debts. I gave up my life for you, so you must do what I say. The essay argues that shedding the illusion of altruism destroys that toxic ledger entirely.
It's like saying, I love you because loving you makes me happy, and realizing that that honesty is infinitely healthier than saying, I am sacrificing my happiness to love you.
Which is such a heavy burden to put on someone.
Exactly, because the moment you say you are sacrificing, you are handing the other person a bill they never asked for.
Which brings us back to the flute and the violin. If you admit you are playing the flute because you love the flute, the violinist can relax and just play their own instrument.
That perfectly ties it together. All right, so we've established the mechanics of how everyday people, politicians, and parents are fundamentally operating from self-interest, and how acknowledging that can actually be a good thing.
A very good thing.
But the essay takes this even further. What happens when we apply this lens to history's ultimate symbols of selflessness? I'm talking about the people who literally define martyrdom and sacrifice.
You mean the saints and prophets?
Exactly. Does the rule still apply?
The text is remarkably consistent here. Shufeng writes that there isn't a single person in the world who lives entirely for others. Not one.
Bold claim.
He specifically points to some of the greatest prophets and spiritual figures in human history, naming Jesus Christ and Buddha Sakyamuni.
Wait, really? Those are bold examples to use. They are the textbook historical definitions of living for humanity.
According to conventional tradition, yes, they are. But the essay argues that even Jesus and Buddha lived more for themselves than for others.
How does that even work?
To understand this, we have to look at the mechanism of their actions. The text makes a vital distinction here between the objective result and the subjective motivation.
Okay, let's break that down. Objective versus subjective.
Objectively,
Mm-hmm.
looking from the outside in, yes, they served others, they changed the course of history, they alleviated suffering, and they taught multitudes. That was the external output.
Which looks totally selfless.
Right. But subjectively,
Yeah.
internally, the essay argues they were completing their own missions. They were achieving their own spiritual goals and realizing their own ultimate potential.
It's almost like an artist. Like an artist paints because they must paint to fulfill their own internal vision.
Yes.
That is a subjective internal drive. If the painting happens to move millions of people and bring them joy, that's a massive objective benefit to the world. But the initial drive was entirely about the artist's own self-actualization.
That is a perfect parallel. And the essay even applies this standard to its own author.
Oh, really? Sufeng talks about himself.
He does. Swivin writes about his motivation for founding Lifechanyuan. He states that he wants to lead humanity out of misery and create a new era for all people.
Which, again, sounds like the ultimate act of living for humanity.
On the surface, yes. But he openly, unapologetically states that intrinsically, it is for his own benefit. He is fulfilling his unique trajectory. He quotes a profound thought in the text. The sages recognize selfishness for its selflessness.
So what does this all mean? Let me synthesize this because it really flips our definition of what it means to be good.
It completely flips it.
It means that by being utterly and authentically dedicated to your own internal mission, which is, by definition, a selfish pursuit of your own potential, you end up doing the most good for the world.
Yes, exactly.
The objective output looks completely selfless to everyone else. But if Shifeng or Buddha or the visionary artist abandon their true internal calling just to conventionally serve others, say, by dropping their work to just run errands for their neighbors, They would lose their true self.
They would fail their cosmic mission.
Wow.
That is exactly the mechanism at play. It completely redefines virtue. In this framework, virtue is not martyrdom. Virtue isn't destroying yourself so someone else can stay warm. Virtue is radical authenticity.
Radical authenticity. I love that.
The more selfless Swifang tries to be in the conventional sense, the more he deviates from his design. The more he focuses on his own spiritual realization, what the text provocatively calls being selfish, the more he actually achieves for everyone else.
It makes total sense when you put it like that.
Let me ask you, the listener, directly. What stands out to you when you think about the leaders, the creators, or the mentors you admire most? Are they constantly agonizing over sacrificing themselves for you, or are they just radiating energy because they are fully realizing their own potential?
When you frame it like that, the answer is obvious. The people who inspire us aren't the ones complaining about how much they gave up. They are the ones who are completely on fire with their own purpose.
Exactly.
And this realization seamlessly transitions into what we might call the dark side of this whole philosophy. Because if true virtue is admitting you live for yourself, then claiming you live for others isn't just a harmless white lie. It's not just a polite social convention. According to the essay, it is actively harmful.
This is where the text becomes unrelenting. It states that when someone claims, "I do this completely for your own good, not for mine," they are not just mistaken about their motives.
What are they doing then?
They are attempting to fool the public. They are mistreating others in spirit and soul.
Mistreating them in spirit and soul. Why does it use such heavy language? What is the actual harm being done?
Because it is a manipulative lie that overrides the other person's free will. The essay argues that people use the phrase, "I'm doing this for you," as a smokescreen. Let's look at how this operates in practice. First, they use it to find a scapegoat for their own incompetence.
Meaning, like, if a project fails or if a decision turns out poorly, they have a built-in defense. Well, I was only trying to help you. It shields them from criticism.
Exactly. It shifts the blame entirely. If they were competent, they would simply execute their task and let the results speak for themselves. The verbal claim of altruism is a shield.
And what else do they use it for?
Well, the text argues people use this claim to conspire to control others and to shirk their own responsibilities by dumping emotional baggage onto someone else.
This is so universally relatable. I think everyone listening has felt that suffocating weight at some point. It's the classic guilt trip wrapped up in the phrase, "after all I've done for you."
We've all heard that one.
Right. We recognize it intuitively as a weapon. It's designed to make you feel small, to make you feel indebted, and to make you comply with whatever that person wants.
It is the enforcement of that unwritten ledger of debt we talked about earlier.
And reading this text, it is incredibly liberating to realize that when someone says, "I'm doing this for your own good," you don't have to carry that guilt.
You really don't.
You don't have to accept the premise, because what they are actually doing is masking their own desires and trying to dictate your trajectory. The text even says that when someone says, "I live for you," you can conclude they are incompetent, greedy, selfish, and merciless.
This raises an important question about the nature of honesty. What does it actually mean to be a good person?
Right, because our old definition is completely gone now.
The essay argues that a good person seeks truth from facts, with honesty. They do not use deception. And the ultimate honesty, the absolute bedrock of truth in human interaction, is admitting that you are responsible only for yourself.
And anything else is just manipulation.
To claim otherwise isn't care. It is emotional abuse disguised as care. It's an attempt to impose your will on someone else's universe.
We are right back to the orchestra. It's the fleetist trying to grab the violin again, but this time they are yelling at the violinist saying, "Stop resisting, I'm only ruining your strings for your own good."
It creates nothing but chaos and resentment. By repeatedly claiming you live for others, you are denying your own responsibility to fulfill your unique potential, and simultaneously, you are crushing theirs.
What an incredible journey this text is. It challenges so much of what we accept as normal. Let's take a breath and recap the narrative arc of this deep dive, because we've covered some serious philosophical ground today.
We really have.
We started all the way at the top with the greatest creators design, the idea that you are a completely unique individual engineered with your own distinct trajectory.
And we established that trying to deviate from that trajectory to live for someone else creates cosmic and personal exhaustion.
From there, we walked through the uncomfortable but ultimately liberating myth of the selfless relationship. We looked at the symmetrical expectations of spouses, the asymmetric power dynamics of politicians, and the biological imperatives of parents, realizing that self-interest is the true engine of human action.
Which led us to explore how even history's greatest prophets were fundamentally pursuing their own subjective internal missions. We unpacked how their selfish dedication to their own potential is exactly what created their selfless objective impact on the world.
Right. And finally, we looked at the sheer toxicity behind the phrase, I'm doing this for you. We recognized it not as an expression of love, but as a manipulative tool used to control others, mask incompetence, and dodge personal responsibility.
It's quite the paradigm shift.
It really is. The massive takeaway here is that taking absolute responsibility for yourself and admitting that you live for yourself isn't a character flaw, it's the design. It is the only way the symphony actually works.
It is the only way. And I want to leave you with one final thought drawn directly from the very end of the essay we studied today. It's a moment where Shui Feng addresses the ultimate savior complex.
Oh, I like this part.
He writes about someone coming forward, puffed up with grand intentions, and declaring, I want to deliver all beings from torment.
Which, to a conditioned ear, sounds incredibly noble.
It does. But Shufeng's response to that grand declaration cuts right through the illusion. His response is simply, bullshit. Why do you want to deliver all beings from torment? Everything is running in Tao, need you not also?
Everything is running in Tao, need you not also?
Wow! It anchors us right back to the beginning. The Tao represents that natural flow, that cosmic design of the greatest creator where everything has its own trajectory. It forces a complete reevaluation of our motives. If the universe, the Tao, the grand symphony, is already running in its natural order, who are you exhausting yourself trying to save today?
It's such a powerful question to chew on as you go about your week. Who are you exhausting yourself trying to save? And if you sit quietly and you are brutally, uncomfortably honest with yourself, are you really just trying to save yourself? It changes absolutely everything about how we interact with the people we love, the work we do, and the guilt we carry. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it gave you something new to think about, a new lens to look through, and maybe, just maybe, permission to finally put down the violin and just play your own flute. Until next time.